Greetings from Paranormal M, your guide to uncharted territories of the supernatural. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay informed about our latest spine-tingling tales. We hope you're prepared for a journey into the mysterious. Story number 1, The Third Floor. This story happened to me about 20 years ago when I was still a sophomore in high school. My aunt and uncle had a 3-story condo that was always kind of off. It wasn't a particularly old or creepy-looking building, in my recollection, but as soon as you set foot inside, there was something in the air that reeked of, quote-unquote, something isn't right. For a little background, the condo's first floor held the living and dining areas, the kitchen and the back door that led to a small patio. The second story was the master bedroom, 2 guest rooms, a bathroom, and a little nook for the washer and dryer. The third floor was a game room with several old video game consoles like an Atari Jaguar and Sega, with my uncle's Star Trek collection in one corner and a door that led to the attic crawl space. It also had a pull-out sofa sleeper for guests. This layout information will be important later. As I grew up, we visited the condo many times, and like I said, the entire building had an odd aura to it. But this all culminated on the 3rd floor. When you walked over the final stair up to the 3rd floor, the air just changed. Where on the 2nd floor, you could hear the sounds of family visiting downstairs and hear traffic outside, on the 3rd floor was always completely silent. The air was heavy, thick. No sounds permeated here, and you always were left with a feeling of being stared at or watched, almost as if you were intruding there. Being kids, my cousin and I would often go up to the 3rd floor to play video games. However, we never really went up there alone, and absolutely never went up there at night. It was just one of those places that felt like it was on a different plane of existence, its own pocket dimension of silence and gloom. My family had seen and heard things in that condo on multiple occasions. It was common sense that one could hear footsteps pacing up and down the stairs at night. You would see figures out of the corner of your eye. Doors would open and close despite being locked. Objects would move, that sort of thing. One morning I woke up before the adults to find a trail of pennies lying end to end from the 3rd floor all the way down to the kitchen. I remember being a little bit unsettled by this, but not particularly afraid. I was more interested in free money, and greedily put the pennies in my Ziploc baggie to take home. Because these goings-on were relatively benign in nature, my family assumed it to be the spirit of my late grandfather, who was the mischievous sort in life, watching over the house at night. Fast forward to my teenage years. My uncle died suddenly one year, and so a flood of tight-knit family descended on the condo to comfort my aunt and attend to my uncle's funeral. Because there were so many people staying in the condo, my mom, dad, and sister and I were relegated to sleeping upstairs on the 3rd floor. I was creeped out, but figured, hey, how bad could it be? Boy, was I in for a surprise. The day of the funeral came and we all attended the wake, after which the family gathered outside to comfort my aunt, who was sobbing uncontrollably at the loss of her husband. I remember the sound being a gut-wrenching, heartbreaking cry of pure despair. It hurt to listen to. So I quickly retreated from the crowd of onlookers and went to find my cousins, until we were ready to leave. Little did I know that all hell was about to break loose. We got back to the condo and everyone wept and shared stories of my uncle. After some time we all grew tired and decided that it was time for bed. I slept on the sofa, while my mom, dad, and little sister all shared an air mattress down on the floor by the foot of the sofa. What I remember most about that night was the cold. I startled awake in the middle of the night, unsure of what had woken me up, only to be greeted by the most bone-biting, skin-saturating cold I'd ever felt in my life. It permeated the entire third floor, soaking through my clothes and into my body. I shuddered and pulled the blanket tighter around me. I remember being puzzled by the cold, as the third floor usually got uncomfortably warm. I lay there, shivering for a few minutes, and then I heard it. The sound I heard is hard to describe, but it's probably best described as something trying its best to mimic my aunt's sobbing from earlier. It was a dry, raspy voice, crying and choking, and carrying on in a mocking tone. And it was extremely loud, ear-splittingly loud. It was coming from the far corner of the room, over by the crawlspace door. I froze in terror. What on earth was going on? Was this some kind of an entity? I peeked over the edge of my blanket and gazed into the darkness of the corner of the room. Nothing, of course, was there. My mother, having had past experiences with paranormal things, had once told me that if anything scary ever happened like that, to ignore it and it would go away. So that's exactly what I tried to do. I squinted my eyes shut and pretended to be asleep. When that didn't work, I tried covering my head with the couch cushion to blot out the sound. That didn't work either. The sound stayed as loud as it had been, almost as if it were coming from inside my own head. I lay there for what seemed like minutes, but probably only about 45 seconds or so, when another noise grabbed my attention. The rustling of blankets. I peered out from underneath my own blanket to see my mother had bolted up on the air mattress. She looked left and right with a confused expression on her face, and then jumped up and ran down the stairs to the second floor. My father and sister were still sound asleep. This next part is what my mom told me happened after she ran down the stairs. Mom got to the second floor and immediately opened the master bedroom, thinking my aunt was awake and crying. Nope, sound asleep. Mom could still hear the wailing, so she checked all the other rooms on the second floor. Everyone was asleep. Confused, she stood at the bottom of the stairs leading to the third floor and listened to the wailing. Meanwhile, my fear had given way to curiosity, glancing cautiously over towards the corner where the sound was coming from. I leaned over the banister and gazed down to the second floor. I could see the hall light on downstairs, and Mom looking bewildered at the bottom of the steps. "Mom!" I called. She nearly jumped out of her skin, her head snapping up to look at me. "Are you looking for that wailing sound?" Mom's eyes widened. "You hear it too?" I nodded at this. "Why isn't anyone else waking up?" she called. I shrugged. She then turned away from me and headed toward the stairs leading to the first floor. As she rounded the corner towards the first floor, she ran headlong into my little cousin, his eyes wide-eyed. In tears and shaking. Mom asked him what was going on wrong, and he said, "It's coming to get me." Mom began to ask what was coming to get him. Then she saw it. A shadow, a humanoid, came lurching up the stairs toward them, blacker than darkness that surrounded it. As it approached, it began to morph, to grow into something monstrous. Now standing 7 or 8 feet tall, it began lunging up the remaining stairs at them, making a horrible sound as it came. Mom grabbed my cousin and began sprinting up the stairs, the shadow stomping just behind her. This cacophony caught my attention, and now, completely ignoring the wailing in the room with me, I craned my neck over the banister to see what was going on. I saw Mom sliding around the corner toward the third floor stairs, a flood of shade and darkness filling the hallway behind her. My little cousin was screaming and clutching at her neck as she ran, taking the stairs 2 at a time. "Mom!" I cried. "Mom, it's right behind you, run!" She obliged and came flying up the final few steps to the third floor. As soon as she cleared the landing, the wailing completely stopped, cut off, like someone pulling the plug on a speaker. She leapt into the air mattress with my cousin. I abandoned all pretenses of maturity and clambered onto the mattress with them. We all sat there, huddled in abject terror, staring into the darkness of the staircase, Nothing came, no shadow, no wailing, nothing. That's when the stomping started. Boom, 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 up and down the stairs it went over and over, rattling the knickknacks on the walls, vibrating the floors. Still nobody woke up. After several minutes of this, the footsteps reached the third floor and stopped dead. The temperature in the room immediately started to plummet, and Mom clearly had enough. She started violently shaking my father awake. "Wake up! Wake up!" When Dad woke up, everything got quiet again. He was groggy and annoyed, and asked us what we were even doing. We explained what had happened. My cousin still crying in my mother's arms, and he looked at us skeptically, but listened intently with us for any sounds in the house. Sounds never came for the rest of the night, but none of us really slept after that. In the morning, my cousin, still visibly shaken, explained to us what had happened to him before Mom found him. He said he heard a voice calling him from downstairs, and thought his father, my late uncle, had returned. He was young, and I don't think he understood the permanence of death. When he went down to investigate, he said he ran into the shadow, and that it was too big to be my daddy, end quote. I don't know what exactly happened that night. I've read about shadow people, about Jim, demons, but nothing quite matches the being that we saw that night. If anyone has a good answer, or has run into an entity like this, please feel free to let me know. Story number 2. My first formal posting here. I had just graduated from college, year of 2005, moved into an older duplex in northeast Minneapolis with my then boyfriend, now ex-husband. I'm very sensitive, so pick up energy like a sponge. From the moment I entered that house, I knew it was bad news. At that time, I wasn't certain if it was active or residual. Turned out to be both. I remember one of my nights there. My then boyfriend had to head out for Colorado for a wedding. Family friend. I wasn't invited since we've only been together for less than a year. I was organizing DVDs. We had a lot of them. Mostly horror movies. I remember coming to the movie The Grudge. I hated that movie. Me too. I verbally announced that I hated that movie out loud and set it aside in the living room. I came to the end of my organizing and wanted to place The Grudge at the end of the alphabetized horror DVD order. It was now gone. It was literally about a foot away from me when I set it aside. I then began to freak out a bit as I literally recognized something is fucking with me. Spent a good 30 minutes searching this tiny home. Guess where it was? Top shelf of the bedroom closet. The rest of that night sucked. Didn't sleep a wink out of the feeling of being watched, and the energy was just flat out ugly. Following day, I left for his apartment, as I couldn't deal with whatever the hell was in the house by myself. Don't return until he gets home 2 days later. More time passes, and I decided to buy a kitten behind his back. He hated cats, but loved this 3-pound kitten. This detail is crucial further into the story. Well, more weird stuff happened over the next few months. Mainly objects moving around, corner basement light being turned on after we turned it off. Mostly harmless stuff. My ex played it off. He wasn't 100% on ghosts, demons, beings, etc. like I was. Yet. The real weird stuff starts happening 6 to 8 months in. He never allowed the kitten to sleep with us. He'd bite our feet as he was teething. He was super playful. You know how these little ones can be. I had made him a beautiful area in the living room, a pet bed, a cat tree, and toys. It wasn't after long that he would start body slamming our bedroom door to let him get in. Whatever the hell was in that house was clearly tormenting him. Still, my ex was not allowing that little guy in. He wrote it up as an obnoxious kitten, not a potentially harassing being. A little more time passes, then I decided to return to school to study at the Aveda Institute, which was literally 10 minutes from us. I was getting ready one morning and I could hear my ex talking to himself. The bathroom was literally by my bedroom. I go into the bedroom and he was all confused. He thought I had been in our room as someone woke him up with a shoulder massage. It wasn't me or the cat. Let's fast forward a bit more. There was this particular night, the night before I started practical training for my aesthetic studies. This means you are hands-on. We went to bed just around 10. I had absolutely terrible night terrors that night. I was basically being chased down the street by some individual with a butcher knife. I woke up from my ex screaming. He was apparently having the identical dream. He was screaming, "Stop, stop!" We were both startled by this, chatted, then tried to get back to sleep just before 1. Most fucked up thing happens next. We both managed to fall back asleep, but I'm physically attacked by something on my face. All I remember is that I felt something like a match on my lower eyelid, and I was awoken by something super bright while my eyes were shut. I scream and wake him up. It's exactly 3 a.m. Sure as day, a huge welt on my lower eyelid. He finally admits he's starting to believe something is severely wrong here. I treat my eye. Thank God I didn't have to go to the ER. Who'd believe this? I then do the prayer of St. Michael. I'm not religious, but I do believe words hold power. I'd like to include the detail that my practice partner at Aveda saw this and asked what happened the next day. I lied and I said it was a cigarette burn. She was a good friend of mine, but this was way too weird to share. Shortly after that burn incident, my ex and I were discussing moving. We were in our bedroom during this discussion. I had a dresser with 2 larger mirrors that I placed perfume on, probably about 40-some bottles total. Please keep in mind, I was and am a pretty girly. Hard for me to say that, sorry guys. So, having 1,000,000 bottles of perfume isn't out of the ordinary. However, this is. We were discussing this pain in the ass entity, and next thing you know, both mirror trays of bottles were literally tossed off the dresser. It's like some unseen force had literally taken its long-ass arm and whipped them off. That was pretty much it. He was finally a full believer. You can't unsee that shit. We moved shortly after. Evil freaking house. Other things happened there, but I'm also a skeptic as well as a believer. You've gotta be. I'd also like to add that we didn't use drugs. He didn't drink, and I only did social things on weekends. Over the years, I feel that I've gained a greater understanding of the unknown, and realize a lot of these entities are truly energy parasites. I'd like to say that humanity is a lot stronger than it knows. Please seek truth, guys. Enjoy your journey. Story number 3. The Wiggler. This is an experience I've had about 2 years ago, and every time I'm outside to get inside my house at night, I can't stop thinking about it. It was late, around 12 or 2 a.m., sometime around then. I was dropping off my girlfriend at the time back at her house. It was raining kinda hard, but then stopped by the time I reached my house after I dropped her off. There's this Korean church across the road near my house, which is dimly lit. I'm looking at the church to get my keys to unlock the door, and there's a person that's at least 6 feet tall staring at me from the church in the dimly lit area. Which I should add in, the light was illuminating this cross that was underneath the light. Like anything underneath this light you can 100% see. But for me, because I'm at least 100 feet away from it, it was a very orangish, old light. The figure that was standing in the spotlight that light was giving was still pure black. I could not see a facial expression or anything. After this incident, I tried to reenact this experience. I could see at least how human and lively they were. This figure was neither of those. My heart begins to start beating quicker because I start thinking to myself, like, that's not right, and it wasn't. I'm still struggling to get the keys into the lock because I keep looking over and focusing on this figure. I finally have my keys in the door and unlock it to finally go inside. As I turned to see what that thing was, one last time, it was running towards me. Its arms were above its head and it was waving them, but they were super wiggly. I don't even know how to explain it. It's as if you were to strum a guitar string and the string waves and wiggles. Its arm were doing exactly that. So I guess this guy's saying that it was moving like a waveform. It's about 40 to 50 feet away from me at this point, and I can still see no facial expression or anything. It's just darker than the night sky. I hurry up to go inside and lock the door, scared to look out the window. It's the next day, still shocked and scared. Never seen it since then. I started calling it the Wiggler ever since then. It just kinda suits it. I have a similar story. A cry behind a closed door. And my bird. I was invited over by some friends to play some board games one day. It was late at night and it was raining pretty bad. We just finished a round of Cards Against Humanity. One of the friends starts talking about ghosts and her experiences with them. She then tells all of us that there was a girl that lived here before that took her own life in the closet next to the bed. She told us that sometimes when she sleeps, she can hear a soft cry coming from the closet. It's been a while, so I can remember if she said that she experienced anything else, but that's what stuck with me. She said, if you put your head on the door, close your eyes, and listen very carefully, you can hear her cry sometimes. Well, that's exactly what I did. Nothing happened for a while till everyone walked out of the room to go get pizza that we ordered. I closed my eyes and one last time before I was going to give up, and I heard her. It was a whimper, like a very, very soft cry. A cry you would do if you were around people and just didn't want anyone to hear. I immediately jumped up and went to go tell everyone, and they were all shocked. One by one they tried, but no one heard a single thing. Everyone gave up, so I went back to the door. After a couple of minutes, I heard her again. Such a soft cry. She was heartbroken. Put my hand on the door and felt so much energy. It's something I've never felt and won't be able to explain. Excitement, fear, both? I'm not even sure. I moved away from the door. Hours pass. We're headed home. I wanted to check to make sure I wasn't just hearing things before I left. I didn't hear her. We went back to my home and talked about it. Such an interesting experience I've been through. This is just scratching the surface of my experiences. Story number 5. Time Loop. When I was young, like grade 4, I think I got stuck in some sort of time loop. I literally remember it like it was yesterday, because it was so profound and odd that it just never left me. I was in class, sitting at the back right-hand side of the room. The teacher's desk was on the right side wall, but the teacher was standing down in the far left corner, standing at the projector. I needed to ask her a question, so I got up from my desk and started running. Bad, I know, but running around the desks to go get her. On my way, I passed by the teacher's desk. As I ran by, I looked down at her car keys on the desk and took note of them. Just a weird kid who noticed stuff. My head moved as I ran forward, and my gaze stayed fixed on the keys for a second. Then I looked back forward, just about going to continue running toward the teacher, but out of nowhere I went back. All of a sudden I was running past the teacher's desk again, and noticing her keys again. Then it happened again, and again, about 3 or 4 times. By the end of it, I was so extremely confused and thrown off that I stopped running completely and just stood there, stunned, almost off balance, just completely baffled because I swear I just ran past that desk 4 times. The whole thing only lasted maybe 5 seconds, just repeatedly running past the desk and noticing the keys. People in class laughed at me because I seemingly was totally normal as I ran past the desk, and then just suddenly stopped, looking totally dizzy and confused. But at my age, my brain just couldn't comprehend what had happened. I didn't know of time and space and odd things like that, so I brushed it off. Maybe a hallucination. But it's bothered me every day since. Story number 6. I think my deceased dad saved my life. This happened quite a while ago, and several years after his death. I should mention that my dad was a heavy smoker, and the family car always smelt of cigarette smoke. This was before the dangers of smoking were really publicized, and I always associated the smell with warmth and security. Neither I nor anybody else in my family smoke. I was driving home through the village where I used to live. It was broad daylight, and my mind was on other things. I wasn't really paying attention to what I was doing. I abruptly realized that I was approaching a treacherous T-junction far too fast. It was one with poor visibility where you really needed to stop to check properly for traffic before pulling out. I went to stop on the brake pedal, and it was already mostly to the floor, and at the same time the car was filled with the smell of cigarette smoke. The car did have an emergency stop in the nick of time, and as I took a deep breath and unpicked my fingers from the steering wheel, I heard his voice say, "Now concentrate, you daft bat," which is exactly the sort of thing that he would have said. So thanks. Dad, I miss you. Story number 7. We should always believe our children. Don't take their voice away. I think when you do that, and when you dismiss them, it makes them more vulnerable. I also like to share a bed with my son for this reason. My husband wanted him in his own bed tonight, and not very long after, my kid was calling for us. So I got him out and I changed his diaper, and as he's laying on the floor by the crib, or I'm changing his diaper and he's telling me about, "What's that under the crib?" I asked him about it. I asked if it was mean or friendly, and he said friendly. Thank God. But the point is, we have to help our children and build them up and let their voices be heard and treated with respect, just as we would want to be treated ourselves. I think love, especially from a parent, is the strongest shit. It's my most absolute hard boundary. No means no. Don't fuck with my kid. I've had my own paranormal encounters as a child, and when I was a child, they were much stronger and scarier. But as I've gotten to be an adult, they're not as scary or strong, but I think children are fresh out of the spirit realm, so they're going to be having a stronger connection, and be more likely to see things that we don't. After all, I voice texted this. I'm now sleeping in a bed with my son, and I'm going to go to bed myself. Good night. Good night. Story number 8. Anyone remember playing with an identical copy of themselves as a kid? I have a pretty decent memory. Obviously, it isn't perfect or anything, but recently, I completely floored my parents when I told them I remember going with my mother and my grandmother to visit my father in prison. He did a stint that was a couple of months. And I remember seeing him in his blue prison uniform and how my mom and grandmother would hold my hands and swing me back and forth a little as he walked. I was 3 at the time. I didn't even realize that I knew he had been in jail until I brought it up one day. I distinctly remember one night that we stayed over at my grandmother's place. I was maybe 5 at most, and she had this creepy-ass collection of stuffed animals hanging from her wall by nails for some godforsaken reason. They looked fine during the day, but scared the shit out of me at night. Never liked spending time with her overnight because of them. One of the reasons this stands out to me now is because of the missing twins. It's the only thing I remember that were on different pages about, you could say. He had no problems with the creepy little fuckers. Conked right out at bedtime, no problem, and in fact, I remember just staring at the little bastards in the middle of the night as he was absolutely passed out beside me, dead to the world. So there it is. There are other memories, of course, but that has always been the one that stuck with me the most. I've never brought it up with my family because I don't want them to think I'm some kind of head case. Story number 9. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Okay, so I have 3 kids, 4 years old, 3 years old, and 1 year old. We moved in August, but in our old apartment, my 3-year-old son had said on 2 occasions that there was a man in the closet. I had noticed little things that were weird, but no proof, and I was able to brush it off. So I'm still unaware if that was even real, but we moved in August, so new place. And it was cool, didn't feel any weird things or anything, at least when we moved in. In the last maybe 2 weeks, I feel like things have changed. Husband has been wanting home security cameras for a while, so I went ahead and bought them, totally unrelated. We set them up in our room, kitchen, living room, doorbell, backyard, front, all that. One night we heard a door open, and we're both like, damn, the kids are up. But waited for them to come to our room. No one came, so I had to go check, and they were sleeping. 2. TV was playing by itself all of a sudden in my bedroom. No one was in there. 3. Kitchen Google Hub started playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Full song, then shut off when the song ended and went back to home screen immediately. So I called my husband and he tells the electronics are faulty sometimes. Fine. He's not a believer, so whatever he tells me needs kind of hard proof. 4. 2 to 3 weeks ago, my oldest daughter kept waking up at night and coming into our room crying and scared. It became a thing for a couple of nights, so the last night she did, and she brought her sister into our room and quickly turned around into the hallway. Her sister called out for her, and she came back in with her hands on her thighs and walked straight to the camera and stared at it for a second. Then came to lay down. It was weird as shit, because she didn't smile or make a silly face, just completely blank. So after that, I decided I needed to know why she was waking up and just why she was waking up so much. She became afraid to go to sleep. I mean, she would do it, but she was afraid. The first night I put the camera, I saw her legs moving all around. Husband says kids sleep crazy, but I swear it looked like her legs were being pulled in the middle of the night. At first it was just her and everyone was telling me restless legs. I thought, okay, that's logical, but I'm still a little scared. I decided to move the kids into a different room after a couple of nights of seeing her legs move every night to see if the same would continue. 2 nights, nothing normal. Just everything regular kid movement when sleeping. So I thought, okay, I'm crazy. Well, 3rd night of the kids sleeping in a different room, there goes the legs again, but this time it would switch between the 2 older toddlers. 1-year-old sleeps in my room. I saw my daughter being flipped over. Her legs went up in the air and her upper body was limp and her arms flopped onto the bed. And to me, that doesn't happen. Husband obviously says kids move all kinds of ways sleeping, but in that same night, I saw my daughter being held down as she was trying to get up. It looked like her hair was being held down, and when she finally got up, she went to pull the covers, and I swear to God, it looked like there was a pullback from the blanket. I feel like no matter what my husband sees, he'll never believe it. That same night, the two of them had a jump scare in their sleep. I don't know, could have been dreaming, but I had also started to point out the camera towards our bed when we sleep, and noticed my 1-year-old will start to cry, and I won't wake up fast enough. And it looks like their legs are being pulled too, and all of their toes look like they're being curled and flexed when it's happening. So terrified. I stayed up that night, brought the kids into our room, and had nonstop panic attacks and repeated the Our Father over and over again and prayed to God because I have had things happen in my life, but short, quick instances, and then it was done. This isn't letting up, and I'm also second-guessing myself because no one believes me. And God, I want to be so wrong so bad, because if this is real, I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do and what the hell's even gonna happen. I am not going to burn sage, because I've heard that angers them. I'm at a loss, I'm so fucking scared. And I'm trying to be super brave for my kids and trying not to let it feed any of their energy. Story number 10. Strange figure in front of the bathroom. At first, I want to say that I used to be highly interested in paranormal since I was young, but still pretty skeptical about it. Sure, sometimes I see shady figures in the sides of my eyes, especially while working at my desk. Also, I could swear that I saw some figure reflecting in the window above my desk, but that could have been some illusions that my imagination made up. Or sometimes our Amazon Alexa is activating itself, saying things randomly while nobody was in the same room as her. Most of the times we didn't even talk at all, so there's no way that it misunderstood something that we said. But it could still be some technical issues, though. Also, you can hear some sounds in the house from time to time, like footsteps or something knocking against the walls. But that could possibly come from the neighbors next door. I noticed that you can hear them talking or working on their house from time to time. Lately, though, some incident happened to my girlfriend and we really couldn't explain it. She needed to go use the toilet at night. While she sat on the toilet, our toilet is looking right at the bathroom door, and in the middle of the door is made out of frosted glass. Suddenly, some figure fastly went from right to left, right into the bedroom. She said that she was pretty shocked. Couldn't be me since I was already sleeping. Plus, she described it as taller than me and also incredibly thin. Somehow like it was a human figure, but kind of disproportionate. She just saw it for a moment, and it was very blurred because of the frosted glass. But she said if she had to describe it, it would most likely have been an absurdly tall woman in some white dress or something like that. She was so terrified that she wasn't able to come out of the bathroom, so she decided to call me to wake me up. I searched the whole house, but there was nobody around and no sign of someone breaking in or stuff like that. So it wasn't me. It surely wasn't the cats. But there also was no stranger around. It was like it came out of nowhere and gone right into nowhere. My girlfriend swears that it was no illusion, and by her reaction that night, I totally believe her. Story number 11. Had a weird experience that basically broke me mentally for a bit. I'm currently staying in some friend's garage made into a temporary apartment until I get back on my feet. Right off the bat of moving in, I got weird vibes. For the first couple of weeks, I kept having intense nightmares that were partially sleep paralysis, where someone or some things in the garage with me, hiding in the corners, watching me, then slithering around and peeking at me from below the side of my bed, or something coming up behind me and grabbing me. One specific window in the garage creeps me out the most. It's not covered with anything, so if anyone was outside, they could look in. But I can't see out due to the lights I have on inside. My cat will often sit on the window and scratch at it if she's trying to get to something outside of it, which is weird for her because she's freaked out by going outside at all. Kind of a big, wimpy, indoor, pampered baby. So the only conclusion I have is that there's something out there that she's trying to get at. One day a couple of weeks ago, I was listening to music on my headphones. I had my laptop open, had nothing but the main screen on it. I was dancing around, vibing to music, when I suddenly heard a weird, deep sound somewhere in the garage with me when the song I had on was ending, and I could slightly hear my surroundings again. I turned around, and on my laptop, the screen was suddenly jumbled and glitchy. It was kind of started to have a flash and a shadow. These weird symbols that didn't look familiar at all. I ripped my headphones off, and this terrifying sound was playing from my laptop, like a deep demonic voice that sounded like it was speaking backwards. That's what was playing. It was the scariest thing I'd ever heard in my life, and I love spooky stuff. But this was like the type of evil voice that I've only heard in my absolute worst of nightmares. It resembled the song Masked Ball from the Eyes Wide Shut soundtrack, but way deeper and way more evil and creepy sounding. The strange, glitchy symbols kept flashing and changing on the screen, while this weird, backwards voice was speaking through my laptop. I tried to shut it off or hit escape, but nothing was working. Finally slammed it shut and immediately had a really bad panic attack. I ran inside to my friend's house and told them what happened, while I had an absolute meltdown. I made them go back into the garage with me and inspect the laptop, and the plugs, everything. They tried to explain why it did that. We couldn't find an answer. What's even weirder is that we all noticed that my laptop was actually still on mute from when I muted it a couple of days earlier, making it even more strange that I was hearing this coming from my laptop speakers. It shouldn't have been possible. I still have no idea what happened or why. I'd love to chalk it up to some weird technological glitch, but I don't know. There was absolutely nothing opened on my laptop at all, and it was muted. I don't have schizophrenia, and I'm not crazy or anything. Like, I swear on my life this happened, and it wasn't a hallucination or something. Story number 12. Encounter in the park told by a friend. I was 14 years old, and I was about to set off to school. Before I left, my mom asked me if I had any weird dreams that night. I told her no, I didn't, not thinking anything about it, and then went on my way. Fast forward to getting home. My chore was to walk the dog, a large German shepherd. She was a very calm but protective dog. I set off with the dog down my usual route, which was across the road into a wooded park area, with a river running through the middle. It was a wet autumnal day, leaves everywhere and the ground sodden. While we were walking through the woods and down the path, we get to the bridge. The bridge is wide enough for two people side by side to cross, and made of timber to help you envisage it. My dog starts growling all of a sudden as we start crossing this bridge. I look around to see nobody around, and I tell her to, "Come on, stop being silly." She continues to growl and stops in the middle of the bridge. I look down at her again, and she's looking behind us. As I look up in the direction she's facing, there's a girl standing there, right in my face, literally nearly nose to nose. This girl startled me, making me jump. My dog was now barking and growling. I asked this girl if she was okay, but she just stared at me, just staring with a white, pale, gaunt face, all curly red hair down to her shoulders. I got nervous, turned, and walked away with my dog still looking behind, growling. I thought it was strange as I didn't hear this girl approach us on the dead leaves or the wooden bridge. What scared me even more was that she continued to follow us. She maintained a distance, but continued down the path that we were on. At this point, I was fearing for my life slightly and decided to cut through the wooded, swampy area to my left to reach an exit of the park faster. As I cut through this area, I thought I wouldn't be followed due to the ground. To my horror, we were followed, and this girl continued through the swampy ground toward the exit. Once my dog and I got to the exit, we left the park and ran across the road immediately. I turned and noticed the red-haired girl stopped at the gate, then proceeded to turn around and head back into the woods. I went home and told my mom about this experience immediately, to which she replied, "Did the girl have red hair?" I was stunned, and I told her yes. My mom then said she dreamt about a red-haired girl last night. I never walked the dog through those woods again. So after reading this encounter, probably not told as well as my best friend, what do you wonderful people think this was? A spirit that maybe passed in the woods? A girl playing a prank to scare people? My friend and I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this. Strange how he didn't hear the girl approach, and that the dog wasn't happy, usually not growling at any stranger during walks. Also the fact that his mom dreamt of the same girl the night before. Let's answer this fine lady. What do you guys think that was? That's a pretty vivid account on my watch. Story number 13. Shocking experience. My husband and I were door dashing one night around 2:50 a.m. We got an order that took us out into the middle of nowhere. The pin on the map showed us the address that was leading into the middle of a crossroad. To the left and right of us was nothing but abandoned service roads, fields for miles, and electrical towers. There wasn't a single person nor house in sight. We were confused, so we called the person who the order was for, and it went to voicemail. In the guy's voicemail was the sound of an air raid siren and a guy screaming, help me, there's a tornado, we're gonna die, save me, please." The man screaming more frantically as the voicemail goes on. There didn't seem to be an end to it either, so I just hang up. I looked at my husband for a minute in complete shock. We call again. It is now 3 a.m. The dial tone that you hear when you're waiting for somebody to pick up was different. It changed and made a screeching sound as it went on to my husband, and I noticed that the street lights were off around us. At that exact moment, we both got the feeling of a death shiver down our spines at the same time. So we left, went home, and didn't go back out. When we got home, I got an unknown call on my phone. I didn't answer it, but it felt like it was linked to what happened earlier that night. I think that someone was trying to sacrifice us at 3 a.m. in a crossroad. I don't know. But it seriously felt like we crossed into another dimension that night. As soon as we got away from the crossroad, the feeling of death left. Story number 14. Childhood hooded figure. So this was something that happened when I was 6 or 7, and until this day, I have no explanation for what happened. So it was during September, a day before starting school, and I was in bed, because my mom always wanted us to sleep early. So, at literally 9 p.m. She was still watching TV, so from my bedroom I could see some light coming into my room. To prepare myself to sleep, I always used to play with plushies. And as I was playing, I feel a shadow on my face, like someone was standing in front of the door. I immediately think that it's my mom or dad that caught me not sleeping, so I pretend that I'm asleep. I open my eyes and I see something standing in my doorway, and it's wearing a long cape with a hood on, but it's short. So I assume it's either my mom or brother trying to see if I'm sleeping, because it's standing there for far too long, so I confess that I wasn't sleeping, and the thing doesn't talk back and still doesn't move. So I'm like, maybe it's a weird shape I'm seeing from something hanging on my door. And as I'm thinking that, this entity moves closer. So I close my eyes and open them back to see if I'm hallucinating, and it moves closer again. At this point, I'm scared, so I try to hide behind the covers, and I see it at the edge of the bed, literally next to my head. And I notice that it's wearing black gloves, and it puts its hand on the wood of my bed and inches closer to my face. So that's when I hide under the covers. I know I wasn't dreaming, because after that my mom closed the TV and I heard her go to her room. I was so convinced that it was a person that I even told my brother that I know it was him that came into my room to scare me, but he denied it and told me it was probably Mom. The thing is, this happened a few days after I found a dead bird on my window, and my dad's family are known to use black magic. My mom's always suspected that the house was haunted, and I've had some experiences when I grew up, but never a full figure. Only something touching me or something moving. Feeling a loved one's presence after death. Not safe for work / extreme language. You've been warned, because I'm going to read it as I write it. I really need some help here because from a scientific perspective, I don't know how much this could be put down to hallucinations. I felt my sister's presence before and I've heard her talk to me and it seems real as fuck. And this is just after all the ugly stages of grief. It's not when I'm constantly upset. The fact is, skeptics just keep me second-guessing myself, and it feels like mental torture. Mental torture to constantly try and think, is it all in my head? Is it real? Is it hallucinations? Help me out here. I wish they would understand people have legitimate reasons to believe in an afterlife, because it's disheartening hearing that it's just a coping mechanism, and people just believe because, hey, they want it to be true. A man told my mom that she needs to accept her daughter's gone for good, and that she's full of confirmation bias, and I punched the guy when I saw him. It's just condescending. Now he has her second-guessing everything, telling her it's because her mind evolved for this shit, and how we're all insignificant in the grand scheme of things. This shit, I'm not kidding. It's kind of what someone thought would be a good idea to tell a grieving mother. I can't go on not believing. She's just a pile of disgusting ashes now. Screw this. She had a good life. This is all you've got. Bullshit. She was 9, barely even got to live a life. Scientifically, there's still some sort of criteria for hallucinations, right? I really hope when I feel her that she's here, that it's the real deal and I'm not just having my mind playing tricks on me. I don't know why assholes have to ruin one thing that's actually comforting and has been helping so far. Story number 16. Please help me figure out this weird event. We moved in this house last year because my apartment burned down, and before this event, we'd heard sort of light movements or a sound like footsteps above us. But the floors are old, and sometimes when you move on them, a noise comes, seemingly from above, so I never thought much of it. A month ago, I was smoking outside. My mom and son came outside to ask if I heard it. I didn't even know what it was, and they told me that they heard a sequence of very loud, very hard knocks from above the living room in my house. My house has kind of an attic space above it, but it's just for storage and insulation. I've never ever been up there. My uncle stored some stuff there a couple of weeks before, though. All of our pipes are underneath the house or in between walls. I came inside and started playing a video game when I heard it took. 5 very loud, very heavy knocks. Hard, like a cop would have, be making if it was knocking on your door. I called the cop an it. As if someone was in the attic and stomping or using their fist to knock. I went into the living room and everyone was looking up at the ceiling. I told them I heard it this time. They told me the source of the knocking had moved a little bit. We were standing around waiting for it to happen again. It sounded to me like it came from between 2 rooms, one of which is the laundry room. So I went into the laundry room to listen. Sure as shit, the knocking happens exactly the same way, but it had moved even further from the first position and was right above the laundry room. It was a little louder too. My son started to get scared and I told him it was probably just an animal or something. We moved to the family room next to the front door because my family was a little spooked now. The family room is on the other side of one of the walls in the laundry room. We were on our way out the door and my grandma was looking up and said something. Don't remember what exactly, but when it happened again, right above my grandma, as if he replied to what she said. The sound had moved again. It was right above us. We went outside and I called the non-emergency police because, I thought it's possible someone could have been up there. I didn't think it really was. I thought maybe it was an animal. The officer took a long time to get there, too. He went up into the attic and saw nothing. Not even animal poop or anything that would indicate the source of the noise. The whole event had us on edge for the rest of the day. It was just so loud and seemed to follow us in the house. We hadn't heard it before or since. Strange midnight biting incidents. A few nights ago, I was peacefully asleep when I suddenly woke up in the middle of the night. I felt an aggressive biting sensation on my forearm, and something had a tight grip on it. Panicking, I began shouting for help, as my mother was in another room, but to my horror, I couldn't open the door or turn on the light. After what felt like an eternity, my mother rushed to my aid. However, when she turned on the light, there was nothing there. We checked behind the furniture in every corner of the room, but there was no sign of an intruder or any logical explanation for what had just occurred. To make matters even more unsettling, a similar incident happened a few days later. This time it was on the palm of my hand, and when my mother arrived and switched on the light, my hand had turned slightly red, as if it had been affected, but there were no visible marks or injuries. These inexplicable events have left me baffled and frightened, and I can't help but wonder if there might be a supernatural explanation for what I've experienced. Has anyone else encountered something similar? Or have any insights into what could be happening? Story number 18. Lifelong recurring dream connects. I met my dead brother. I've had a lot of strange and often reoccurring dreams throughout my childhood. I've always struggled with what they mean. Some were horrifying. People I've never met causing me harm. Some were obviously unrealistic nightmares, but some were weirdly realistic. Not I wake up in bed and go, oh, that was a dream, realistic. It's like I'm doing something, then I black out and wake up in my bed. Those. And I wake from incredibly confused and genuine and having to consider whether it's actually happened or if it was in fact a dream. One particular dream that I've always sporadically had for the past 15 years was meeting up with my siblings and my father at the Santa Monica Pier. It would start with my siblings and I just getting out of the car at the beach, and we would meet up with our father, and it would be strained, but we would enjoy the day together. The dream would always end with me getting on a roller coaster, strapping in, the car would start up, and I would immediately wake up. I think I had this dream a handful of times. There would be long enough periods in between, years, that I would completely forget about it, and then it would happen again, and I would be confused all over again, especially when I became an adult. I went into foster care as a teenager, and I never spoke to my father. My brother disowned me, and I never got to see my sister. As an adult, I moved out of my home state, and I was on my own. Until I moved back to my home state, my siblings and I reconnected in March of 2022. I fed ducks at the park with my sister and took my brother to Knott's to meet his nephews. The morning of August 5th, 2022, I had the dream again, except it started differently this time. It was my brother, sister, and me, and one other person that I didn't recognize, standing around in a circle. We were all just as grown as we are today, late 20s, and in the middle of the conversation about meeting up with our father at the pier. The man I didn't know seemed to mainly be taking charge of the conversation, essentially setting expectations for the day because of how hard it is to see our father who abused us as children. The conversation ended with the man drawing us all into a group hug and telling us that he loved us. Then we headed to our cars to meet up in Santa Monica, and he took his own car. Then the original dream played out, only it ended with me getting on the roller coaster, strapping in, and the car starting up the track. But the man in the seat beside me was... don't know, I woke up, staring at the ceiling with tears streaming from my eyes. I was raised with 2 siblings, but I had an older brother who was murdered at the age of 4 when I was 6 months old. I have 2 pictures of him, red hair with a slight wavy curl, light eyes, and smiling. The man in my dreams was as tall and handsome as my older brother, as built as my father, had my sister's hair color and complexion, red, fair, and freckled, and my mischievous grin. It only took a few waking moments to realize that the man in my dreams was a grown version of my dead older brother. December 1st, 1996. My siblings and I were attacked by our foster mom. We were immediately hospitalized, but my older brother died the next day, a week after his 4th birthday. I was 6 months old. Story number 19. Chronically Haunted. I've suffered from insomnia and sleep paralysis and the strangest dreams and nightmares. I'm a super light sleeper. I've always been scared of the dark, and I'm 100% the type that turns lights off and sprints to my bed. My sleep paralysis is pretty typical. I'll wake up and feel this darkness and pressure and panic. I don't automatically realize that's what it is. I'll usually think it's some sort of dark presence with malice attacking me. I'll try to scream at it, banish it the way I've seen in movies. But when I come out of it, I can recognize that it's just sleep paralysis. That being said, there are other things that have happened revolving around my sleep that I can't rightly explain. There are a few instances I can recall, but at the forefront of my mind was the experience at my grandfather's house. I lived with my grandfather for almost a year. For almost the entire time, everything was normal. But one night as I was sleeping, I felt something touch my foot. It's so typical, scary movie. But I swear I felt something wrap around my ankle. I had a toddler and there was a cat in the house, so I figured it was just one of them on my leg. I'm not big on being touched while I sleep, so I got angry and shook it off. And I felt my foot connect with something solid, kick it, and I heard it hit the ground. What happened next struck me with terror. An ungodly yowl, not like an angry cat, like some sort of demon. I immediately sat up and saw some human-like woman crawling back and forth on the ground, looking extremely agitated. I scooted back against the headboard, looked at the window, and then back at the floor, but it was gone. When I checked the time, I saw it was around 4 a.m. I couldn't leave the bed before the sun came up because I was terrified. When I spoke to my grandfather about it, he let me know that his mother-in-law used to live in that room, and died of dementia. He said that she's haunting the house and was probably the woman I saw based on my description. I didn't get along with her daughter, my grandfather's wife, so I guess it kind of makes sense that she would want to scare me off. Makes me sick to think about it.